On January 27, 2025, in Mesa, Arizona, 14-year-old Emily Pike walked out of her group home. Surveillance cameras caught her leaving at 7:45 p.m., wearing a pink and gray shirt. That was the last confirmed sighting. For more than 2 weeks, her family begged for answers. They weren't even told right away. Her disappearance was reported late. Time was lost. Leads were missed. Then came February 14th. Emily's remains were found off Highway 60. Her death was no accident. It was ruled a homicide. A young girl, gone. A family shattered. A community demanding to know how the system failed. Tonight, we break down the case step by step. The disappearance, the search, the discovery, and the unanswered questions that still surround the killing of Emily Pike. What happened that night? Who is responsible? And why was a 14-year-old left so vulnerable in the first place? Emily Pike was only 14 years old. She was a member of the San Carlos Apache tribe, a community in eastern Arizona. Those who knew her described a girl with simple joys. She liked art. She liked to sketch. She once told people she wanted to go to college. Her dreams weren't unusual. They were the kind of dreams every teenager has. But Emily's everyday life was complicated. At the time of her disappearance, she wasn't living at home. She wasn't with her mother or her grandmother. She was staying in a group home, more than 100 miles away in the city of Mesa. This is where her story begins. In September 2023, Emily was placed in a group home. The decision wasn't made by her family. It wasn't something she chose. It was the result of state child welfare services. Officials believed she needed a structured environment, away from home, where she could be supervised. Group homes are designed for children in difficult situations, kids whose families are struggling, kids who have no safe place to go, or kids who need constant oversight. The one Emily was sent to was far from San Carlos. It was over 100 miles away, in Mesa, a large urban area. For a teenager used to her reservation community, it meant isolation, different surroundings, different people, different rules. To her, it wasn't home, it was confinement. From the start, the placement showed cracks. Emily ran away multiple times. Each time she left the group home on foot. Police were called. Reports were written. She was found wandering the streets. She was taken back. Body cam footage from police captured moments that should have raised alarms. In one recording, Emily begged not to be returned to the group home. She asked to stay with her grandmother. Her words were clear. She didn't feel safe. But the system didn't change course. The warnings didn't begin in 2025. They went back further. In 2023, while living in another group home, Emily reported being sexually assaulted. She told authorities. Police were notified. Child protective workers were involved. But the investigation never led to an arrest. No one was held accountable. Instead, Emily was moved from one placement to another. Each move carried risk. Each change disrupted what little stability she had. Instead of safety, she was left with trauma that followed her into every new home. This history mattered. It showed a pattern. Emily was not just a runaway. She was a child repeatedly placed in situations that exposed her to danger. And each time she asked for help, the response was slow, incomplete, or ineffective. Emily's mother, Steph Docila, never stopped wanting her daughter home. She spoke out after the disappearance, saying Emily had always asked to be placed with family. The grandmother, too, had offered to take her in, but the system didn't allow it. Instead, Emily was kept in state custody, in group housing with other vulnerable girls, supervised by overworked staff. For the San Carlos Apache community, this was a familiar story. Native children have long been placed in foster care or group homes, far from their families. Advocates have raised concerns for years: lack of cultural support, lack of proper supervision, and a high rate of children running away. Leaders in the community had warned state officials. They said the system was failing Native kids. They said more oversight was needed. They said tragedies were only a matter of time. Those warnings now feel prophetic. By early 2025, Emily's situation was clear. She was a teenager who had repeatedly run away. She had a documented history of trauma. She had explicitly asked not to be returned to her placement. Her family wanted her home. Her community had raised alarms about systemic neglect. Yet nothing changed. The group home remained her reality. Every report, every plea, every piece of evidence pointed to the same thing. Emily was not being protected. Emily was not invisible. She was not forgotten. She had a mother, a grandmother, and a community. She had dreams of art and college. But the safety net meant to protect her was fragile. Every hole in that net, missed investigations, ignored warnings, failed placements, pushed her closer to danger. By early 2025, Emily was still in a place she didn't want to be, in a system that had already failed her before. On January 27th, she walked out of the group home once again. But this time she never came back. By early 2025, Emily was living in a group home she did not want to be in, with a history of running away. January 27th, 2025. It was a Monday evening in Mesa, Arizona. At around 7:45 p.m., the cameras outside a group home captured a young girl walking away. She was wearing a pink and gray shirt with dark pants. Her name was Emily Pike. She was just 14 years old. That short clip of video is the last confirmed image of Emily alive. She stepped into the night, away from the lights of the facility. And from that moment forward, she was gone. 7:45 p.m., January 27th. Emily Pike steps out of the group home. Surveillance captures her in pink and gray. Moments later, she's gone. The timeline of that night is painfully thin. Once she left the group home, Emily walked out of frame. There were no other security cameras on nearby streets, no doorbell cameras that picked her up, no traffic camera hits. Nothing. Within seconds, she was invisible to investigators. The staff at the group home didn't follow her. They didn't go after her. They didn't call 911. They didn't alert her family. Instead, her disappearance was treated as routine. Emily had run away before. Staff assumed this was the same. A runaway case. A matter of time before she returned. But this time was not the same. This time, she didn't come back. Those first minutes after Emily walked out should have triggered an emergency response. Instead, they slipped away. Wasted. The next several hours would prove critical, and they were lost. No missing persons report was filed. No Amber Alert was requested. No law enforcement search began. Instead, the group home carried on as usual. To them, this wasn't an emergency. To them, it was just another night. But Emily's absence was real. She was a 14-year-old girl walking into the night without a phone, without protection, and without anyone watching her back. Every minute mattered. Each passing hour erased chances to pick up her trail. By the time the group home acknowledged she wasn't coming back, the trail was already cold. The worst part of this delay was not just the hours lost. It was the silence. Emily's mother, Steph Docella, was not told her daughter was missing that night. She wasn't told the next day either. She wasn't told that week. It would be 7 full days before Steph learned the truth, that her daughter had disappeared. 7 days without searching. 7 days without asking neighbors. 7 days without flyers, alerts, or urgent pleas. By the time the family was notified, Emily had already been gone for more than 160 hours. In missing child cases, investigators stress that the first 24 to 48 hours are the most. What happened to Emily after 7:45 p.m.? That question haunts this case. No witnesses reported seeing her that night. No drivers called in a tip about a girl walking alone in Mesa. No neighbors saw her pass by their homes. There were no confirmed sightings after the moment she left the group home. Did she walk into a car? Did someone meet her nearby? Was she lured, or was she forced? The truth remains uncertain. The only fact is that Emily walked out of her group home and then vanished. Why was there no urgency? Part of the answer lies in Emily's history. She had run away before. Police had picked her up walking the streets more than once. On body cam footage, she had begged not to be taken back to the group home. To staff, this looked like another runaway, and runaway cases rarely trigger full-scale alerts. But this assumption ignored the danger. It ignored the risks of a 14-year-old girl alone at night in a major city. It ignored the past trauma Emily had already suffered. What should have been treated as an emergency was brushed aside as routine. That choice changed everything. On paper, Emily was a missing person the moment she stepped out of the group home. In reality, she was not officially treated as missing until days later. By then, the trail was gone. Camera footage that could have been pulled immediately was already overwritten. Witness memories had faded. Locations she might have passed through had moved on with daily life. For investigators, reconstructing her steps after a week was nearly impossible. Her mother was devastated. Steph said later that if she had known right away, she would have been out searching that night. She would have gone door to door. She would have asked anyone she could find. But she never got the chance. Mesa is a large city, but the area around the group home was residential. Normally, you'd expect someone to notice a teenager walking alone at night. But no one came forward. No residents reported a sighting. No one saw Emily enter a car or speak to anyone. Police later canvassed the neighborhood, but without early leads, there was little to go on. This silence created a vacuum in the case, a gap in the story. From 7:45 p.m. onward, Emily's path was erased. The heartbreaking reality is simple. Emily disappeared within minutes of leaving the group home. No alarms were raised. No immediate search began. Her family wasn't even told. By the time the case reached law enforcement and the public, it was already too late to capture the first crucial clues. Minutes after she walked out, Emily was gone. Hours turned into days, and by the time her family even knew, When Emily Pike walked out of the group home on January 27th, no one called the police. No one called her family. No one raised the alarm. Her absence was treated as routine. Another runaway. Nothing urgent. But the truth was far different. It wasn't until 7 days later that her mother, Steph Dosella, even learned her daughter was missing. 7 days had already passed. A week without action. A week without questions. A week without searching. By the time police were finally called, Emily had been gone for over 160 hours. By the time police were called, Emily had been gone for a week. The case started late, and that delay changed everything. Mesa police took the case seriously once they were finally notified, but they started too late. The first step was canvassing the area. Detectives pulled what security footage they could from nearby businesses, traffic intersections, and residential homes. But most of those systems only held data for a few days. By the seventh day, much of it was gone, overwritten, deleted. Any chance to see where Emily went after leaving the group home was lost. Officers knocked on doors. They asked neighbors if anyone had seen a girl walking in the area that Monday night. But memory fades. Witnesses were no longer sure. Some said they thought they saw a teenager but couldn't remember the time. Others weren't sure if it was even Emily. The case had already slipped into uncertainty. From the start, Emily's case carried a label that made things worse: runaway. Because she had left group homes before, authorities assumed this was more of the same. Runaway cases are not treated the same way as abductions. They don't trigger Amber Alerts. They don't get immediate statewide attention. That one word, runaway, slowed everything. It meant fewer resources. It meant less urgency. It meant the danger Emily faced was underestimated. The tragic reality is that Emily wasn't simply a runaway. She was a missing child in real danger, and the system failed to see it. When word finally spread that Emily was missing, the community acted fast. Members of the San Carlos Apache tribe organized search parties. Friends shared her photo online. Flyers described her last outfit: pink and gray shirt, dark pants. Posts circulated on Facebook and Instagram, asking anyone in Mesa if they had seen her. Local media began covering the story, calling attention to the missing 14-year-old. But it was already too late. If Emily had been walking along busy roads that night, those witnesses were long gone. If cameras had caught her, the footage was erased. If there had been physical signs, footprints, items dropped, they had disappeared after days of wind, traffic, and weather. The community was fighting to catch up, but they were chasing shadows. The late report cost investigators critical leads. Surveillance cameras. Had police been notified the night Emily disappeared, detectives could have pulled footage from streets, businesses, and parking lots. By day 7, most systems had already overwritten their recordings. Witness statements. In missing child cases, the best evidence often comes from immediate recollections. A driver might remember a girl walking. A neighbor might remember hearing voices. But after a week, memory fades. Details blur. What could have been vital tips turned into vague recollections, or nothing at all. Physical evidence. Clothing fibers, footprints, or discarded items are fragile. They don't last long. In the Arizona desert environment with high traffic areas and changing weather, anything left behind by Emily would have been gone within days. All of these leads, cameras, witnesses, physical traces, were lost because the case did not start when it should have. Detectives later admitted the delay was devastating. They were left trying to reconstruct a timeline without the benefit of fresh evidence. Instead of starting with video and witness accounts, they were left with silence. Instead of focusing on a small search radius near the group home, they were left with the entire city of Mesa and beyond. The delay expanded the search zone from blocks to miles, and eventually to counties. It's not that police did. Once the case became public, police and the community issued appeals. They asked residents of Mesa to check their home surveillance cameras. They asked businesses if any footage remained. They urged drivers who had been in the area that night to think back, and report anything unusual. But the problem was obvious. The request was coming too late. Every day that passed made the task harder. Every hour widened the gap. Social media played a major role in spreading Emily's story. Posts from family, friends, and community leaders reached thousands of people in Arizona and across the country. People demanded answers. They demanded urgency. They questioned why a 14-year-old girl could vanish and not be reported missing for a week. Pressure grew on the group home. Why didn't staff act? Why didn't they notify the family? Why did they assume she was safe? The outrage amplified the case, but outrage doesn't replace lost evidence. By the time investigators were fully mobilized, Emily had been missing for too long. In the crucial hours when search dogs could have tracked her scent, no dogs were called. In the crucial hours when cameras could have captured her path, no footage was saved. In the crucial hours when neighbors could have recalled her movements, no one had been asked. The investigation was already crippled. The truth was harsh. Emily's disappearance was not treated like an emergency when it should have been. And that mistake could not be undone. Emily's case exposes a dangerous reality in missing child investigations. When a child has a history of running away, the system assumes the next disappearance is voluntary. But that assumption is not always true. Sometimes it's fatal. In Emily's case, that false assumption cost days, cost evidence, and cost her family any chance of early intervention. She wasn't treated as an abducted child, she was treated as a runaway. And in those first days, the difference was everything. The question now is clear. Why did the system dismiss Emily so quickly? Why did they ignore the warnings? Why did they assume she was safe when history proved she wasn't? To answer those questions, we have to go back to her past, to her experiences in group homes, and to the failures of the system that was supposed to protect her. Why was Emily's case dismissed so quickly? Why were the warnings ignored? To answer that, we have to go back to her past, and to a system that had already failed her. Emily Pike did not vanish without warning. Her disappearance in January 2025 came after years of red flags, years of documented risks, and years of missed opportunities to protect her. In 2023, Emily was just 12 years old. At that time, she was living in a different group home, placed there by Arizona's child welfare system. While there, she told adults something no child should ever have to say. She reported that she had been sexually assaulted. Police were called. Social workers documented the allegation. On paper, there was a record of her trauma. But what happened after? Nothing that gave her safety. No suspect was arrested. No one was charged. The case went nowhere. Instead of placing her in a safer environment, the system simply moved her to another facility. To Emily, it looked like the adults didn't believe her, or worse, didn't care enough to act. This moment was a turning point. It was when she began to lose faith that anyone could keep her safe. From 2023 through 2024, Emily began running away from group homes. It happened more than once. Police reports document these incidents. Officers were called when staff noticed she was missing. They found her wandering the streets, sometimes late at night, sometimes in dangerous areas. Every time, Emily was clear. She didn't want to go back to the group home. She said it directly. She told police. She told staff. But the pattern never changed. Each time she was picked up, processed, and returned to the same system she was trying to escape. To the system, these were just runaway incidents. To Emily, they were desperate cries for help. And each time she was forced back, her warnings grew louder. But no one listened. The strongest proof of those warnings came in the form of police body cam footage. In one incident, officers recorded Emily begging not to be taken back to her group home. Her words were clear. She didn't feel safe there. She wanted to live with her grandmother. The footage showed a young girl, terrified of returning to the place assigned to her by the state. But rules and policies prevailed. Officers returned her anyway. The system did what it always did, followed protocol, not instinct. This was more than a teenager acting out. It was a direct plea for safety, caught on video. And still, it changed nothing. Emily's mother, Steph Dossala, also tried to intervene. She asked for her daughter to come home. When that wasn't possible, she asked for Emily to at least live with her grandmother. But her requests were denied. Officials cited policy, caseload limits, and resource shortages. To them, it wasn't about what Emily wanted or needed. It was about what the system could manage. So Emily remained in a group home, miles away from the people she trusted most. Her family taken together, the picture is clear. A sexual assault report that went nowhere. Multiple runaway attempts ignored as routine. Body cam footage capturing desperate pleas. Family requests brushed aside by policy. Every warning was visible, every piece of evidence was documented, and yet, no meaningful action followed. Emily's safety net was broken. The system designed to protect her instead exposed her to more danger. The failures weren't just about individual decisions. They were structural. Arizona's child welfare system is chronically underfunded. Group homes are often overcrowded and understaffed. Cases pile up for social workers, making it impossible to give each child the attention they need. For Indigenous children like Emily, the risks are even higher. Native youth are overrepresented in foster care, but underprotected. Their communities often report that state agencies ignore cultural needs and family connections. In Emily's case, the consequences were deadly. Warnings weren't missed because they were invisible. They were missed because the system didn't prioritize them. By early 2025, the pattern was undeniable. Emily had been harmed. She had been ignored. She had been returned to situations she feared. And she had been dismissed as a runaway when she was, in fact, a child in danger. Her family had begged for change. Her community had raised alarms, but no one with power acted fast enough. This wasn't one failure, it was a chain of failures, and each link in that chain pulled her closer to tragedy. Emily asked for help. Her family asked for help. The warnings were loud, but the system failed her again and again. By the time Emily left her group home on January 27, 2025, her fate was not yet sealed, but the danger was already written in her past. The reports, the footage, the pleas, the denials. Each one was a missed chance to intervene. So when she walked out that night, she was walking into a vacuum of protection. She was alone not just physically, but institutionally. Her disappearance was not a sudden tragedy without explanation. It was the result of years of neglect by the very system that claimed to protect her. And then, in February 2025, the warnings became reality. After weeks of searching, investigators made a discovery that would break her family and shock her community. And then in February 2025, the worst fear became reality. After weeks of searching, investigators made a discovery that would break the community. For more than 2 weeks after Emily Pike walked out of her group home in Mesa, Arizona, there were no solid leads, no confirmed sightings, no tips that led anywhere. Search teams refused to give up. Volunteers combed through neighborhoods, empty lots, and desert areas. Police expanded their focus beyond Mesa, reaching into the highways and rural roads surrounding the city. By early February, the attention turned to a specific area. Highway 60, the stretch of road that runs east of Mesa, heading toward Globe and the San Carlos Apache Reservation. This wasn't just another random search. Investigators had reason to believe Emily's case was no longer about a runaway. They suspected a crime. Sonar equipment was brought in to check water canals. Drones scanned the desert terrain from above. Search dogs worked fields and washes near the highway. The sheriff's office made the grim announcement. The search no longer felt like a rescue. It felt like a recovery. On Valentine's Day, February 14, 2025, the worst fears were confirmed. That morning, law enforcement officers searching near Highway 60 came across human remains. The location was close to an access road leading off the highway in a rugged area often used as a dumping ground. Within hours, authorities confirmed what the community dreaded. The remains belonged to 14-year-old Emily Pike. The announcement shattered the last hope that she might still be alive. Emily had been missing since January 27th. Now, after 18 days, she was found, but not in the way anyone prayed for. Initial examinations at the scene gave investigators little doubt. This was not an accident. This was not a case of a runaway who succumbed to the elements. It was homicide. The Pike family was notified immediately. Emily's mother, Steph Docella, had clung to hope during the long days of searching. Now that hope was ripped away. She received the news in the worst possible terms. Her daughter had been murdered. The family's grief quickly turned to anger. Steph and other relatives pointed directly at the group home system that failed to protect Emily. Their first criticism was simple: the delay. The group home had waited nearly a week before notifying her mother that Emily was gone. That delay meant police weren't called, cameras weren't checked, and witnesses weren't asked questions in the critical first hours. They waited too long, the family said. If they had acted right away, Emily might still be alive. For the Pike family, this was not just a murder. It was the tragic outcome of years of systemic neglect. The discovery of Emily's body hit the San Carlos Apache community with devastating force. For them, Emily wasn't just another teenager in the state's care. She was one of their own. Her struggles, her warnings, and her pleas to live with her grandmother had been ignored. Now those ignored warnings ended in death. Community leaders organized vigils. Candles lit the night as families gathered to honor Emily's short life. Tribal elders spoke about the broader crisis of Native youth in the foster care system. Across Arizona, outrage spread quickly. Social media filled with posts, photos, and the hashtag #Justice for Emily. People were angry not only at the killer but at the system that left Emily exposed. She begged for help, one community member said. Nobody listened, and now she's gone. This was no longer seen as just a tragedy for one family. It became a statewide scandal. Local and national media outlets seized on the story. Nightly news broadcasts led with Emily's photo, a 14-year-old girl wearing pink and gray, last seen on surveillance cameras as she left her group home. Headlines asked the same haunting questions. Why wasn't her disappearance reported sooner? Why was she treated as a runaway instead of an endangered child? How did the system fail to respond to her history of abuse and trauma? Reporters pressed state officials for answers. Why had Arizona's Department of Child Safety not acted more decisively when Emily repeatedly fled group homes? Why were her mother's requests ignored? The pressure grew. The public demanded not just justice for the killer but accountability from the very agencies tasked with protecting her. Emily's remains were taken to the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's office for a full autopsy. The forensic team's task was clear: determine how she died and gather any evidence that could point to the killer. The medical examiner confirmed what investigators already suspected. Emily's death was the result of homicide. Though officials did not release all details publicly, sources indicated that the cause of death involved trauma inconsistent with an accident or natural causes. Alongside the autopsy, investigators searched the surrounding area of Highway 60. They looked for tire tracks leading into or out of the scene, footprints that could link a suspect to the site, discarded items that may have belonged to Emily or her killer. Every detail mattered. Each piece of evidence could help reconstruct Emily's final hours. Emily's case did not just expose a killer. It exposed flaws in the system itself. The discovery of her body confirmed what her family and advocates had said for years. Children like Emily were not being properly protected. Every stage of her life in state care carried failures. Her sexual assault report in 2023 went unprosecuted. Her repeated runaway incidents were dismissed as routine. Her pleas on police body cam were ignored. Her disappearance was reported late. Now, with her body recovered, those failures were impossible to deny. For more than 2 weeks, people held on to hope. They believed Emily might still be alive somewhere. But February 14th ended that hope. Emily was gone. And the anger that followed was immediate and intense. Parents across Arizona asked themselves, if this could happen to Emily, could it happen to their children? Community members asked, how many more Native children have to be failed before the system changes? Lawmakers were confronted with the question, would they finally reform the group home and foster care system, or let another tragedy happen? The discovery of Emily's body was not just an end. It was a beginning of outrage, of questions, of demands for justice. The discovery ended all hope. Emily was gone, and the anger was just beginning. With Emily's remains recovered, the investigation shifted into a new phase. No longer was the focus on finding a missing girl. Now, it was about finding her killer. Who had the opportunity? Who knew her vulnerabilities? Who could have taken her from Mesa to Highway 60? And beyond the killer, who in the system would be held accountable for the repeated failures that left Emily unprotected? Now that Emily's body was found, the search shifted. Who was responsible? How would justice be pursued? And what would investigators uncover next? February 14, 2025. Emily Pike's body was found near Highway 60. That moment changed everything. Until then, the story had been framed as a missing person case, a child who walked away from her group home, a runaway, according to the files. But with the discovery of her remains, the case was no longer about a missing child. It was now classified as a homicide investigation. Mesa Police Department took the lead. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office provided support, and soon the FBI joined, adding federal resources and expertise. Search teams were replaced with homicide detectives, Evidence bags replaced flyers. The question shifted from "Where is Emily?" to "Who killed her?" From the start, investigators looked back at Emily's troubled past. They knew her history. They knew the risks she had reported before, and they knew the warnings that had been ignored. Three main theories quickly emerged. Theory 1: the past attacker. In 2023, Emily had reported being sexually assaulted in another group home. The case was documented. Police reports existed, but no arrest was made. No charges were filed. That attacker, whoever he was, had never faced consequences. Investigators now had to ask, could he have come back? Did he track Emily down? Was he responsible for her death 2 years later? Theory 2: someone familiar. Emily's disappearance didn't look random. She walked out at night unaccompanied. Did she leave to meet someone? A friend? An acquaintance? Or even someone she trusted from her time in care? Police reviewed staff records, visitor logs, and known associates. Anyone who had access to Emily's life became a potential suspect. Theory 3: a stranger. The third theory was harder, but it couldn't be dismissed. Mesa and the surrounding area had seen cases of predators targeting vulnerable teens. A child walking alone at night could become an easy target. Was Emily intercepted by someone driving near Highway 60? Could this have been a crime of opportunity by a stranger? Investigators worked through these theories systematically. They reviewed traffic cameras near the group home. They requested cell tower data to identify phones active in the area that night. They knocked on doors near Highway 60, asking if anyone had seen a girl in pink and gray that evening. Every theory remained open. Every lead mattered. Even without a named suspect, the legal side of the case began moving. Prosecutors from Maricopa County coordinated closely with police. They gathered the evidence already in hand: surveillance footage showing Emily leaving the group home at 7:45 p.m., her history of abuse reports, testimonies from her mother and grandmother about her fear of returning to group homes, forensic details from the discovery site near Highway 60. The county attorney made a clear statement to the press. When an arrest is made, this case will be prosecuted as homicide. We are preparing as if this will go to trial tomorrow. Behind the scenes, they worked on potential charges: kidnapping, first-degree murder, possibly charges linked to neglect if it was proven that institutions failed to protect her. For the family, this was some reassurance. For the community, it was a promise that justice would not be delayed. As soon as Emily's case was declared a homicide, the media spotlight intensified. Local news ran daily updates. National outlets picked up the story. Talk shows debated what went wrong. The coverage followed two main questions. Question 1: who killed Emily? Reporters pushed police for answers. Every press conference ended with the same demands. Were there suspects? Any arrests? Any updates? The public wanted a name. Question 2: why wasn't she protected? Emily's history came back into focus. The reports of assault in 2023. The runaway incidents. The body cam video of her begging not to return to a group home. These clips were replayed across television screens, painting a damning picture of systemic failure. Social media amplified the outrage. Hashtags like #JusticeForEmily and #NoMoreFailures spread rapidly. Thousands of users shared posts demanding accountability. Many pointed fingers directly at Arizona's child welfare system. The pressure was relentless, and it left investigators with no room to move slowly. Beyond online outrage, the public took to the streets. In Phoenix, dozens of protesters gathered outside the Department of Child Safety. They carried signs, "Justice for Emily. Children deserve protection. No more lost kids." In Mesa, members of the San Carlos Apache community held vigils. Candles lit up the night, forming Emily's name in glowing letters. Elders gave speeches, calling her death a tragedy not just for her family, but for all Native children in the system. The demands were clear. Find the killer. Hold the system accountable. Make sure no other child goes through the same failures. Emily's mother, Steph Docella, gave her own statement to reporters. "My daughter begged for help. Nobody listened. Now she's gone. Somebody has to answer for that." Police reported that they were analyzing every piece of evidence collected near Highway 60. Soil samples, tire tracks, and any trace DNA were being processed at the state lab. Cell phone records from the area on January 27th were subpoenaed. Detectives wanted to know who was in the zone between 7:45 and 8:30 p.m. Interviews were reopened with staff at the group home. Police questioned them about Emily's behavior that day. Did she receive calls? Did anyone visit? Did she leave expecting to meet someone? They also re-interviewed witnesses from Emily's past assault case. If her attacker was still free, investigators had to know his whereabouts in January 2025. Step by step, the investigation built its case. But no suspect. By March 2025, the case of Emily Pike had become more than just a homicide investigation. For the police, it was about catching a killer. For prosecutors, it was about preparing charges. But for the community, it had become something bigger. It was about accountability. Why wasn't Emily protected after reporting an assault? Why were her runaway attempts ignored? Why did it take a week for her disappearance to be reported to her mother? The courtroom, when it came, would not only be about the person who took Emily's life. It would also be about the institutions that had allowed her to fall through the cracks. As one activist put it during a rally, Emily's killer must face justice. But so must the system that left her vulnerable. This dual demand, justice for the individual crime and justice for the systemic failures, was what kept the case alive in headlines. The investigation pressed on. Leads were followed. Evidence was processed. The legal groundwork was laid. But even as detectives worked, another reality became clear. The family had to live with their loss, and the community had to carry the weight of what happened. The central questions now stretched beyond the courtroom. How would Emily's family survive this grief? How would the San Carlos Apache community heal? And what changes would Arizona make, if any, to protect children in the future? With Emily gone, the search for justice continued. But beyond the investigation, a harder question remained. How does a family, a community, and a state move forward after such a tragedy? The discovery of Emily Pike's body ended the search, but it did not end the pain. For her mother, Steph Docella, and the entire Pike family, the loss was unbearable. They had lived for 2 weeks in a state of hope and fear. Now hope was gone. Steph described her daughter as creative, bright, and filled with dreams. Those dreams were gone, cut short in a way no family should ever have to endure. The family's grief turned quickly to anger. They wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted to know why Emily had not been protected, even after years of warnings. In the San Carlos Apache community, Emily's death was felt like a wound shared by all. Prayer vigils were held, candles were lit. Elders spoke about how Native children had long been overlooked in the welfare system. Emily's story became a symbol, not just of one girl's life, but of generations of systemic neglect. In Mesa and Phoenix, across Arizona, the reaction was loud. People asked, how could this happen again? Why did nobody act when Emily begged for help? Editorials in newspapers questioned the failures of Arizona's group home system. Television debates focused on the lack of oversight, underfunded welfare programs, and repeated warnings that had been ignored. On social media, hashtags like #JusticeForEmily and #ProtectNativeChildren trended for days. Thousands demanded that state leaders address the crisis. Emily's story had moved from a single tragedy to a statewide reckoning. Much of the anger was directed at the group home where Emily had lived. The facts were clear. Emily left on January 27th. She was not reported missing immediately. Her mother did not find out until a week later. That delay was catastrophic. Investigators admitted that the lost week meant lost evidence, lost leads, and lost chances to save Emily. The group home faced intense scrutiny. Lawmakers questioned its procedures. Advocates demanded audits of every facility in the state. For many, Emily's death highlighted a deeper truth. The system designed to protect vulnerable children had, in fact, placed them in danger. Emily's death reignited long-standing debates about Arizona's child welfare system. Critics pointed to chronic understaffing, lack of oversight, and high turnover among caseworkers. Many children, like Emily, were placed far from their families, often against their wishes. In Emily's case, the warnings were documented. Reports of sexual assault in 2023, multiple runaway attempts, pleas caught on police body cam footage. Each one was an opportunity to intervene. Each one was ignored. For advocates, Emily's story was proof that the system was not just flawed, but broken. The Pike family refused to let Emily's case fade into silence. Steph and other relatives spoke publicly, calling for accountability. They demanded not only justice for Emily's killer, but also reform of the group home system. Their message was clear. Emily's death could not be in vain. If the system did not change, more children would suffer. The family's courage in speaking out gave strength to others. Parents of children in similar situations came forward with their own stories, adding to the demand for reform. By early March 2025, Arizona was at a turning point. Lawmakers promised hearings. Activists organized rallies. The Department of Child Safety announced internal reviews. But for many, promises were not enough. They wanted action. Emily's case became a test. Would the state finally confront its failures? Or would her death become just another tragedy in a long list? Emily Pike was gone, but her story remained. Her case forced Arizona to look at its failures in the mirror. It forced communities to question how many other children were suffering in silence. The outrage, the grief, and the demand for justice all pointed to one truth. Emily's death was not just about one child. It was about an entire system that had to change. Her story became both a tragedy and a call to action. Emily Pike is no longer here, but her story reminds us of what happens when the most vulnerable are left unprotected. Her death demands not just mourning, but change. As the investigation into her death continues, as legal questions remain unanswered, the reflection is clear. A family has been shattered, a community has been shaken, and a state has been forced to confront its failures. The fight for justice is not only about punishing a killer, it is about fixing the system that failed Emily before that night in January 2025. If Emily's story moved you, don't let it fade. Share this video so more people know what happened. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime investigations that give a voice to victims. And most importantly, speak up. Demand accountability. Demand change. Because no child should be failed the way Emily was. Justice for Emily is not just about one case. It's about protecting every child from being the next name we say in sorrow.